Welcome to my commentary of another fascinating round of chess from the World Championships. Now, round 10 was an unbelievable battle between these two guys, and we can tell by now there's hardly anything between them at the moment, and there's everything to play for. So what do we expect after such chaos in round 10? Something calm or something crazy? Let's have a look. Well, Magnus Carlsen had the white pieces and he started with e4. A lot of people were predicting what he was going to play with white. Very, very hard to predict Magnus's first move, and e4 was played. Now, one thing Magnus hasn't done is show anything from the opening as white. And he showed a couple of things as black, I think it's fair to say, in round 1, maybe a little bit in the last round. But as white, he had that one game in the English we looked at where he had some little nibble, but really it hasn't been sparkling, I think, to put it nicely. But that's really, he doesn't really aim to do anything crazy in the opening. He aims to outplay his opponents later on, so it's not so surprising. Caruana now plays e5, and we now have the Petrov, which a lot of people predicted would be the main opening battle between these two players. Fabiano has experience playing this in the last couple of years with white and black, so it's hardly a surprise. Knight takes e5, and now, of course, d6. We can only pray for the romantic games of old with the Cochrane gambit, knight takes f7. If Magnus had played this, I would have shaved my beard off, eaten it, and then drunk a bottle of Jack Daniels and done other weird stuff. But probably a good thing he didn't do it. Well, I mean, this is an old gambit where white gets some compensation for the piece. 2 pawns, a check, open king. But at this level, you can't really play it with computer backing. So knight to f3. First time we've seen this move. And a move that I thought might occur here, knight c3. One of the more dynamic choices in the Petrov, because there's many other things you can do, d4 being one move, but it's so symmetrical here to really prove an advantage against someone as well prepared as Fabiano. It is going to be incredibly difficult. So knight c3 I was very happy to see, and this generally leads to opposite side castling. Yes! Knight takes c3, d takes c3, and there's a change in pawn structure. White has double pawns, but control the d file, and a bishop coming out here. In actual fact, a lot of Magnus's openings have been like this. Magnus has taken the double pawns and used them to his advantage. You think those positions he was getting the Rosalimo when he had pressure on the d file. Very quickly to remind you, when Magnus was black, he had a couple of games which continued along this way, where again he would take with the d pawn, get these double pawns, pressure there. So slight sort of theme going on. But this is a mainline position. D takes c3, bishop e7. The old line used to be bishop f4, but it was never entirely clear why the bishop goes to that square and not to e3. This diagonal looks much more logical, and if black even tries to castle queenside here, at least you're targeting something. The bishop may even come into the d4 square. Black castled, and now queen d2 showing aggression. I was getting very excited around here. The next move Fabiano played is a well-known idea, was still in theory, knight to d7. This may look a little bit odd at the moment because it blocks the bishop in, but putting the knight on c6 again is something I've talked about in many other videos I've discussed. And when you're developing your knights, particularly, you've got to know where they're going in future. You can't put them on squares where they have no hope to have a future. And here, particularly because there's a pawn on c3, that knight doesn't really have much of a future. It can only come into e5, and it's not clear whether that's ever going to be a good idea. Knight d7, on the other hand, gives it a future. You have c5, and then e4, you have b6, maybe c4, e5 still playable, and f6. So it's much more flexible, and this is how we should develop. Magnus castles. Get in there, Magnus. opposite side castling. Now, there's two ways to approach traditionally positions like this. It's nearly always about attack. When you've castled on opposite sides, you just want to checkmate your opponent's king. Material matters less. You often sacrifice a pawn to open up a line against your opponent's king. And normally you get, real interesting tactical battles, as in many lines of the Sicilian. But now a very intriguing moment occurred. I think this is the first intriguing moment of the match. Fabiano now played knight to f6. And this move has been played, but it's a slightly rarer move than some other options. It was actually played by Ho Yifang, the top or the highest rated woman in the world, against Fabiano. Fabiano had the white pieces against this move. But what was more intriguing is that this is a rare move. And if you can remember one of the videos I mentioned earlier, there was a leak. There was a leak by St. Louis Chess Club, the biggest chess club and most affluent chess club in the world, who've taken over this taken over an area to create what is a very thriving chess community. And they did a video on Caruana's preparation. On his computer screen, one of the files that was shown was a chess-based file that gave this rare move in an interesting mark. So I think we can now clarify that blunder by St. Louis was a blunder. It wasn't a setup. It was clearly a mistake on their behalf, because maybe if Magnus Carlsen's team had been looking at this, they could have seen that on the video. And all these little subtle things, all the seconds should be keeping a real close eye on. Interesting. Bishop d3, developing the last piece, getting ready to attack the king. And now c5. This has been played before, and this is a very logical move. It gives the queen access to the white king, and in some cases, the d-pawn can roll down the board. On the minus side, the d-pawn can also be weak, and the square in front of it, because neither of these squares can be controlled by any black pawns now. The black pawn has wandered too far. So slightly risky, but again, all been seen before. Now, I think one of the first times this was seen was in the Four Nations League in England. Harriet Hunt and Andrew Ledger, two international masters. And I actually like the way Harriet played this better than the modern treatment. Harriet played h3 with the idea of lobbing Gary up the board. And this, again, is one of those traditional ways to attack. The pawn storm. You use your pawns to open up your opponent's king on the other side. We want to get this Gary pawn, g4. It can't be taken, now it's defended. Then g5. And then eventually h4, h5 and g6. Ripping apart the protection of the black king. Now, pawn storms they don't only work, but they're much more effective when your king is on the other side of the board from where you're lobbing up the pawns. Because obviously these pawns, if your king was on g1, imagine this king here being over here, these pawns are generally needed to protect your king. They're like your bodyguards, and if you start throwing your bodyguards away on holiday in, Australia, they're not going to protect your king in England. So that's why pawn storms are stronger when your king is on the other side of the board, and they become a more effective tool. And there are cases where pawn storms are played with your king on one side. Let me give you one example, because I think all these things are quite relevant to the way you should be looking at formulating ideas in the middle game. When should you pawn storm? When should you think about pawning storm? What are the pros of it? What are the cons? I mean, in some lines of the Sicilian, the open Sicilian, I'll very quickly show you this. This line is the so-called Tamanov, and we often get variations like this occurring. In some situations here, white can play g4. In a situation like this, where you do pawn storm and your king is on that side of the board, but it is risky. It can backfire. Often that can lead to disaster. So it's much easier to pawn storm when your opponent's king is on the other side. So I was really hoping for h3 when who knows what could have happened. Maybe black would have gone b5 and they just go for it. That would have been fireworks. But of course, so risky to play like this when one loss will put you out of contention. Now, I know a lot of talk has been made about, okay, these games are maybe not the most exciting, but I think they are. And you can imagine it's better to be a world champion than just to perform for people and play a King's Gambit that may well lose. So rook he1, putting it on open file. Bishop e6. And now, I think one of the first new moves of the game. Previously, Sergei Karyakin, of all people, had played bishop g5 here against Hari Krishna. And Hari Krishna played the horrendous h6 in this position. I mean, inviting bishop takes h6 and queen takes h6 when we've ripped apart the protection of the black king and there's really no way to stop something nasty happening. All these pieces are lined up. This is just disaster zone. So when I first saw this bishop g5, I was wondering what White's idea was. I think the idea becomes clear if we play a couple of moves like queen a5, a3, b5, and now this move, very important. Let's say b4, and we have complete chaos with something like queen h4. Maybe this was an idea that White was considering. Maybe not in this particular position, but to get the queen to h4 and threaten bishop f6 and queen h7 checkmate. You know, pawn takes c3, or pawn takes a3, bishop takes f6, and God knows what's going on here. Someone's going to get mated. Don't ask me who. I expect it's going to be black because the king can come here, because this is very hard to stop now, but I can't guarantee that. So bishop g5 has been played in the past, but then Aldo, a friend of mine, recommended that maybe Magnus's idea was to grab on a2. In the same vein that Bobby Fischer did in his World Championship match against Spassky. He blundered a piece like this in one of the earliest rounds in 1973 Reykjavik, even though he went on to win that one. But this has some sense. There's a beautiful idea that black has. Let's say b3, trying to trap that one. And the idea is king b2. So queen a5, king b2 doesn't help black at all. There's no queen a3. But what black can play is c4. An amazing possibility. The point is, whatever White captures this with, let's say bishop takes d5. And the real point becomes clear that now bishop a3 is not just check, it's not just annoying, it's not just a bishop, it's checkmate. Put that in your pipe and have a toke. So that is disaster zone for White. So some very interesting ideas in this opening, a lot of ideas behind what was played. Magnus therefore played king b1. And after queen a5, well, he decided now to play c4. And this is where the crowd booed a little bit, in my stream anyway, but totally understandable. Get rid of the queen and hope to play against this backwards d-pawn. But Fabiano was up for the challenge here. And he played... This is what's happened in this match. Magnus has given himself positions where... Maybe 3 years ago it would have happened differently, but he's given himself positions where he can play and push, and he is. He's still playing amazing chess, they both are, but Fabiano is such a rock. You can't break him down. I mean, there's so many ways to go wrong, like d5, knight g5 here. Fabiano finds a series of good moves yet again. h6, maybe this is still prep, I would not be surprised. Stopping this one, knight h4. Rook e8, knight g6, and I think this may well have been theory here, trying to win a bishop. If the pawn takes the knight, the rook takes e6. Getting the bishop pair would be advantageous to one side. But now knight g4, a lovely counter-attack, and this is a brilliant move by Fabiano. Other moves were looking quite tricky for black. And the real point of this is when White wins the bishop and defends f2, this knight finds a grand square on e5 where it will eliminate that bishop and lead to an opposite coloured ending, which should be completely drawn. And that's entirely what happened. Bishop f4, we had a capture, we had a rook d7, and after more exchanges, not much to report here, people, we had ideas of the back ranker. So at some point, more exchanges, and of course, this position is opposite coloured bishops, and these are generally always going to be a draw. If you're trying, I mean, who's got the better chances? White has, because White's king is more active, and these pawns are already committed to dart squares, so the white bishop may pick them off. But even if you're 2 pawns up in opposite coloured bishop endings, it can often be a draw. How do you defend them? This is just a little bit of tidbits I'll give you. If you're ever black in a situation like this where you're slightly worse, what you should aim to do is put all your pawns on the same colour square as your bishop. So black should be putting all his pawns on light squares. Why? Because then the opposing bishop cannot attack your pawns. because these guys are never going to meet. They're always going to dance around each other, doing a little dance, but never touching. And this is how you draw. So if you put your pawns always on the same colour as your bishop can defend them. Your opponent's bishop can't attack them. And, well, he started to do this. A6, A3, and now I'm not sure why he played the next move. He didn't really need to give a pawn. I think he could have gone bishop D5, B5 and C4. But he decided just to centralise his king as another easy way to draw. This does lose a pawn, but it's opposite coloured bishops. Now he plays very cleverly. Pawn on a light square. Watch this, light square bishop. And he brings the king to a sensible square. Pawn on a light square. These pawns can't be attacked. So the only way white can maybe make progress here is to win the base of the pawn structure, which is one of these two guys with the king. But the king is never going to be able to get around to that one. And even if it does attack that one, the bishop defends. So to me, this is a dead draw. And they played on for a little bit. Magnus eventually finds a way to make a pass pawn, but it really doesn't matter because the pass pawn he makes is going absolutely nowhere. This is the other thing, what opposite coloured endings, bishop endings, you can't support the c6 square of your own bishop, and your opponent can defend that with two pieces. So the pawn's going nowhere. A bit more jigging about here, but I mean, okay, Magnus might as well try because he is the pawn up, but he doesn't need to do any, black doesn't really need to do anything here. And I think I could even defend this position. The one chance is to play f5, create a passed h pawn, and this eventually does occur. Now taking on f5 would be a mistake because white gets some chances now with this pawn. Some chances to push that pawn. Don't give your opponent a passed pawn if you can help it. Bishop b1, a much better drawing move. And now the point is, if you take here, the bishop takes, it controls this square, and this, or even better, pawn takes. Just take with a pawn, so your bishop keeps more squares, and white can never get a passed pawn moving here. Easy draw at this level. So again, maybe not the most exciting game in a lot of respects, but as we can see, there's a lot of tension there. There's a lot of stuff going on behind, and both players are just testing each other so much. Magnus is trying something out that had a good chance of giving him a small advantage. And he might well have had that in his notes. Fabiano probably extremely well prepared, and he defended extremely well. He didn't give anything. He put his pieces on good squares. He calculated well. And when that happens in chess, a draw agrees. One game to go. Who the hell is your money on? It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of rumours and stuff in a second, but as you may notice, my company, GingerGM, only for today, depends when you get this video, but for a very short period of time, we are doing some great deals. You'd be crazy not to go and check out our shop using the tokens here. We're doing 50% off our GingerGM collection. This is like 110 hours of Grandmaster tuition from me, ex-world champions and other top players teaching you openings, and it's for half price at the moment, and it's only £40, something like that, and it will take, it's a really good way to improve your chess, money back guarantee, and it's a great way to support this channel. If you want to keep me doing more of this stuff, then that's a great way. Go to the shop, go and purchase something. That does help me massively. It keeps me doing free things like this. I do this for free, and I hope occasionally a couple of you will buy a DVD, which will help you improve your chess and help me. It's a great way to support me. Now, the rumours I was talking about, I thought were quite interesting. Sergei Karyakin, last challenger for the World Championships, he actually played the first mover today, and we can see that Grishchuk actually said during the commentary, I don't know, I want to get your feedback on these comments. And this is the bottom comment here. Grishchuk said it was extremely humiliating for Sergei to actually make the first move of the World Championships. Do you agree with that? Someone who's actually in the middle of his career making a move for someone else. Another thing that was interesting, a very strong Russian player, Tomaszewski, 2750, he's been, said that he thinks the way this competition is going, this World Championships is going, it's more a reflection that Magnus has actually lost a lot of the power that he used to have. He still, he basically saying that if Magnus was playing the way he did a couple of years ago, he'd have won this World Championships by now. Is this true? Is this actually the way it's going? Well, I'll let you guys decide. But thank you for watching this video. There's one more game to go. I am so excited. I'm going to live stream it on my Twitch channel. So you'll watch my commentary live. I'll do the first couple of hours at least. That's actually going to be on Monday. So I hope to see you live on my GingerGM Twitch channel. Otherwise, I'll do a recap there. Thank you so much. Please like this video and go and check out the GingerGM shop. Goodbye, and I'll catch you all soon. Thanks for watching.